Mahayana, in the Mahayana, these glimpses in the Mahayana, these glimpses have to be cultivated and brought about constantly. So there is a notion of effort. There is a notion of getting somewhere from here to there. Whereas in the Vajrayana, we're already there. We're already here fully. In the Vajrayana, he says they're already fully developed, although we might have to push ourselves to experience them. Which I think, again, just means being able to recognize and allow these things to occur. The only problem, he says, is in how long these gaps and glimpses could be experienced. In the Mahayana, he says, it's possible to experience gaps, but these gaps are clouded with conflicting emotions. Again, there's still an idea of somewhere we need to get to, as opposed to just simply being here. He says in the Vajrayana, the gaps are real, a sheer drop. It's very sudden, on the spot, we can wake up, a sheer drop. He says at first these gaps are very quick, and then we begin to expand the gaps so that we're not dependent on just glimpses. And he says this is more than perception, it's just what we have. So again, it really comes down to our ability to fully identify with our true nature, with our inherent wakefulness. Because perception means we perceive something. In other words, there's a separation between perceiver and perceived. But he says but here there's no separation between perception and perceiver. So the experience of Vajra nature is not even an experience. It just happens. We're just open to it on the spot. He says that Vajra nature is non-conceptual and happens without collecting further reference points or recording anything in the subconscious mind. It just happens. So again, it involves a complete letting go of our ordinary way of relating to the world with conceptual mind, with some kind of duality between self and other, with some sense of reference point, and just allowing this to happen. And the idea of not with this happening without recording anything in the subconscious mind means that it's not, and in these moments, we're not planting further karmic seeds in the Alaya Vijnana, that we're just simply fully present. The next section goes further into this idea of being free of reference points by talking about letting go of grasping and fixation. Grasping and fixation are interesting terms, and they actually have Tibetan counterparts, and it can be understood a couple of different ways, but I actually looked up, because I knew there was a piece from the Nalanda translation group about how they work with these terms. Fixation actually refers to our tendency to fixate on a sense of other. That we have that before we have a sense of self, we actually fixate on something separate from ourselves. So the fixation actually refers to what we studied in the Mahayana as ego of Dharma, ego of other. And the grasping is the activity of ego of self, or ego of individuality. So that in this way we create a dualistic experience where there is perceiver and perceived, where there is apprehender and apprehended. And in this case, we're letting go of that. We're relaxing that. We're seeing through some of the more subtle nature of how we create this duality. So he says the absence of grasping and fixation provides something extremely firm. It's the firmness of pure ground. And I think what we're talking about here in terms of the firmness of pure ground is reality, things as they are. And he gives the example of flying in an airplane and going up above the clouds where we realize there's blue sky all the time, which I think really speaks again to the notion of the indestructibility of this experience, that we might not recognize it all the time, but in fact, there's always blue skies. He says this kind of solidity is beyond the level of ego clinging, because at that point we're no longer harassed by our desire. It's also an interesting sense that, again, letting go of grasping, we're no longer harassed by our desire. When we let go of grasping and fixation, we find pure ground, which is all pervasive and spacious. And he says it's firm, not because there's a reference point, which is what we usually think of in terms of firmness, having something that we can grasp onto, but because there's no reference point. In other words, it's this very ungraspability, the complete openness that we experience that makes it firm, makes it clear. He says the realization of non-reference point is connected to being without hesitation. So again, that sense of sheer drop that we just talked about, it's complete letting go. It's connected with firmness, but firmness does not mean anything solid. He says it could be called lucidity or clarity, maybe. And he also says that it could be shifty as well as firm. And with that there's a bit of a letdown because there's nothing to actually hang on to. I actually wanted to read, this is again one part of the transcript where it actually wasn't presented in the talk, but was presented in question answer with student. So I'm going to read the question and answer, which actually covers this piece, because it has a slightly different flavor, I think. So the student asks, in relation to the glimpses that we experience, I've been wondering about the relationship between the unhesitating quality that you have been talking about and the firmness and solidity without any reference point. Trungpa Rinpoche. Well, I think we have a linguistic problem. Without hesitation is connected with realizing non-reference point, which is the firmness we're talking about. We're not talking about firm as anything solid as such. It could be lucid rather than firm. Yes, sir, that's what I meant. Lucid, or even shifty if you like, which is firm. If you look up into the middle of the sky, which is completely blue, without any clouds, you could say that it is very shifty, but at the same time it's very firm. It is firm because the sky is blue all over. At the same time, you can't focus your eyes on it, so it's shifty. You see what I mean? It's firm as well as shifty. You can't fix on anything because you can't focus your eyes on the blue sky. There's nothing to focus on. Student. So it is a sense of not looking at anything and sort of seeing. Trungpa Rinpoche. Well, you are looking at the sky. We have to admit that. There's nothing very mystical about the whole thing. Because the whole thing is vast, therefore you can't focus on it. There it is firm. It is firm because you can't focus, because you can't grasp anything. If you're floating in space, there is firmness in some sense. If you are a lost astronaut floating in the sky in outer space, the space is very firm because you can't hang on to anything. So it is a different kind of firmness from the usual notion of hanging onto a column or crushing your pillow in your arms. So is there a particular relationship between the firmness and the glimpses? I mean, do the glimpses turn into a sort of constant vision, or are they always just glimpses? Trungpa Rinpoche. No, the glimpses actually become a letdown in some sense because there's nothing to hang on to. If you sustained your glimpses, then that might be firm because you would be continuously experiencing that letdown. So it was from that series of questions and answers that particular section was developed. And again, I think what we're ultimately talking about is the non-graspable quality of awareness. We actually look at our experience in the moment. And shifty is an interesting word, but I think that's what we're talking about here. That it's beyond concept, beyond any label we attach to it. And when we do attach a label to it, we're working with something else. We're working with our concept of it as opposed to the actual experience or the actual experiencing. You should think of it maybe more as a verb than a noun then. Anyway, the last section I'm going to talk about, fairly short, was glimpsing threefold Vajra being, where he says when we're able to take off that far, we're able to completely let go of reference point, completely let go of grasping and fixation, completely let go of any sense of I and other as separate entities, completely let go of the notion of subject-object. And we're able to let go that far, we begin to catch a glimpse of what's known as threefold Vajra nature: Vajra body, Vajra speech, and Vajra mind. And he says that at this point, he feels that actually Vajra nature might not be the best term, that it's almost too embryonic, that a better term might be Vajra being. And that when we give birth in the Vajrayana, we're giving birth to a fully grown person. So again, we're talking about a complete experience in the moment. By means of Vajra vision or your understanding of the absence of grasping and fixation, you develop Vajra being. And then Vajra body, speech, and mind are expressions of that complete freedom from grasping and fixation. So that's as much as I came prepared to say. I think at this point, John will take over. And hopefully we'll have no more seasonal duns.
Good evening. I'd like to start by seeing if we could actually move into what Trungpa Rinpoche is describing here. So if you would you take a good meditation posture? And Barry, could you switch to gallery view, I think. Oops, there's Michael. We still have speaker view, I think. Maybe I just do. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I removed the
I
spotlight.
have all kinds of problems. Okay, so take a good posture and just open your eyes and gaze straight ahead and bring you into this place, wherever you may be. And let your awareness just rest here. In fact, it's really not so much a matter of awareness and being the focus as it is this space, this room. We're right here in it. Our awareness fills it. All kinds of things are arising in it, this voice, sights, the sensation of your body as it sits, however you're sitting, and whatever else may be appearing. But you rest here in this awareness. This awareness is always with us. We just come back to it when we come back from thought. We go off into thinking, what's for lunch? Am I doing this right? Do I like this? We've been Zoom bombed, whatever the thought may be. And then the thought disappears, and here we are, right here in this space. And this space is being and it's awareness combined. Thoughts come and go, and when they go, all that's left is this space, here and now. This is what's being discussed in this reading. This is the Vajra nature. This is our fundamental nature. He names it in different ways, but it's all coming back to this. And then we talk about the different aspects of this and how it plays with neurotic mind or contravenes neurotic mind. But it's so simple and rich. It contains all of our experience now. That's the only place this space lives. And it's not a matter of us knowing it. It's really just a matter of us acknowledging it or coming back to it and letting that acknowledgement and return go. And here we are. This goes by many names, this space, and it's the core of what he's talking about in this chapter. So I'm going to continue now with the text. I'd say you can relax, but really the essence of this awareness is ultimate relaxation. There's no effort to it. We're having all kinds of technical difficulties tonight. I can see a big delay, so pardon. Can everybody hear properly? Michael, could you tell me?
Yeah, sound is fine.
Okay. So the next chapter, or next section, Michael, the last section you covered was glimpsing threefold Vajra being, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The necessity of mind training. This is really interesting, I thought. All through the years, I've never put so much emphasis on Lojong practice, mind training. That's what Lojong means. And here he talks about it as being absolutely essential. That this threefold Vajra being, the ability to rest here with Vajra body, right? Speech, coming delayed, and mind, knowing this. It's just completely as it is, without any effort on our part to come back to this awareness, and that this awareness of it comes out of Lojong practice. He says, if you're fully trained in Lojong, mind training, your body, speech, and mind turn into Vajra body, Vajra speech, and Vajra mind. That means that they're right here now. They're indestructible because there's nothing to them. They're constantly changing and passing away. He says that allows you to remain in the Vajra world physically, to hear the Vajra teaching, and to experience glimpses of Vajra mind. Glimpses of Vajra mind means coming back to this. It's that simple. And the Lojong practice slogans, so many of them lead us back to this. Like, for instance, always maintain only a joyful mind. When you maintain a joyful mind, you let go of all the complaints and hopes and fears. And here we are, right here. Whoops. I just went into sync for a minute. Maybe it was because of talking about Vajra body, speech, and mind. Very slight delay. Used to be much bigger a minute ago. He says, when you do sending and taking, that's, remember, Tonglen, you experience absence of this, of me, because you're so involved in sending and taking, sending good, taking bad. He says, nobody is actually there to do the exchanging. It just happens between space. And this happens, the more you do Tonglen, it begins to get very confused and blurry. Who's doing what? There's just this space of pain coming, joy going, back and forth. And who is sending what and receiving what gets very blurred. And that's good. This is a kind of enlightened confusion in which you do not know who you are, whether you are the receiver or the sender. You have a gap, which is a very interesting point. Sometimes you have a conflict with someone, and it causes you great pain, and it's causing them pain. And you do Tonglen for that person, you think. But actually, you're doing Tonglen for the conflict, which is causing all this pain. And who is getting what gets very, very blurry. I recommend it. I recommend letting go of the I and other in Tonglen practice. And you come more and more and more into this space of being in which good and bad are moving back and forth. He says, when you work with the Lojong slogans, you actually discover your own basic gentleness, intrinsic goodness, and you begin to see your hesitations disappear. Your gentleness and intrinsic goodness are here, now, in this space of open awareness. It has nothing to do with thinking, I and other. We can let Silvio in. Silvio, he's late, but he's genuine, I think. Whoever is watching this. So the key, again and again, is to come back from thought into this simple awareness of whatever it is in this present moment, now, here, resting here, full of color, sound, vividness, beauty, all kinds of things, joy, sorrow, feeling, heart. He says, when you work with the Lojong slogans, you actually discover your own basic gentleness. And this gentleness lives in this space. Intrinsic goodness, and you begin to see your hesitations disappear. You develop a vision based on fearlessness, gentleness, compassion, spaciousness, and invincibility. I mean, these are the qualities of this space. And it's fearless. It doesn't have any fear. It's gentle because it allows everything to arise and pass. It has compassion in it because we appreciate the beauty of this vivid presentation of phenomena within the space. It's spacious and it's invincible. You can't destroy it, always there. He says Lojong begins to become a Vajrayana-like situation at that point. It is a matter of putting together the Vajra world and the Vajra nature that exist within you. The Vajra nature and the Vajra world are one. They are this, now, beyond thought, afterthought, containing thought. It's utterly immediate. It's ungraspable because it has no particular shape or form. It includes everything. This space of awareness. We come back to it. We're thinking, and then we wake up, and here we are, right here in this space of awareness. And then we go off thinking, and then a horn goes off, a friend calls us, and we wake up, and here we are again, in this open space in which everything comes and goes. He says in this section, it's putting together the Vajra world. This is the Vajra world, and the Vajra nature, your ability to recognize that exists within you. When you put those two together, you begin to have a basic understanding of entering into the Vajrayana altogether. This is what the Vajrayana means. It's not a matter of knowing something, of improving, yourself, of making progress on the path. It's really a matter of letting go and coming back to already are. Our Vajra nature is there all the time. It always has been. It's just waiting. It's not even waiting, but we can come back to it, rest in it, acknowledge it, and find greater intelligence, greater peace, greater love. I think I'd like to open it up to discussion at this point. This is so profound and important. Philip.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to talk for a minute. So first, I'd like to thank our teachers. I want to thank Michael and John for what you're doing. I'm very aware that there was a lot of trepidation and anxiety at the beginning to even begin to introduce us to this material. And I can only imagine that anxiety and trepidation goes on as you proceed. So to you both, I wish you good heart, strong heart. And I want to acknowledge everyone here because we've learned so much from each other. I love this chapter. To me, it seemed like a huge roadmap. It's the overall view. Everything we've learned in these last 2 or 3 years, the Hinayana, the Mahayana, Tonglen, Lojong, even that thing that I was thinking about for so long, that slogan, rest in the nature of Alya, even that was here. All of that is in this chapter. So that's like the back half. And then there's the forward half, what is to come. We're on a threshold here. Once again, we're standing on a threshold. And in a way, this chapter is, it's almost like a pointing out instruction from Chogyam Trungpa coming down over 40 years, saying to us, this is where we're going. It's outstanding. It's beyond words, and literally too. And that's a problem for everybody all the time, right? Because If there were a perfect word, we'd all be using it, but it's beyond words. There is not a perfect word. So we're stuck with all these approximations, and that's hard. And I'm sympathetic to that. Before I quit, I want to, particularly for all the others and those who might be feeling discouraged, go back a couple of years when I was talking about resting in the nature of Alaya. I was reading this poem by Tokmai Zongpo called 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva. And even though that's all Mahayana stuff, it's applicable to us here. And I want to read the same 8 lines that I read a couple of years ago. Right now, you have a good boat, fully equipped and available, hard to find. To free yourself and others from the sea of samsara day and night constantly, study, reflect, and meditate. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. And then verse 2. Attraction to those close to you catches you in its currents. Aversion to those who oppose you burns you inside. Indifference that ignores what needs to be done is a black hole. Leave your homeland. This is the practice of a bodhisattva. So it's Chogyam Trungpa coming across 40 years, but Zongpo was writing in the 1300s when Chaucer and Dante were writing, and he's telling us right now you have a good boat, fully equipped and available, hard to find. He's telling us, leave your homeland. Once again, we're standing on a threshold, and it's so amazingly fortunate. It's so unlikely that we would be here, that we would have gotten to this point. And to John Baker and to Michael Kern, I want to say thank you so much. The odds of this happening are so small that, what do you call them? A statistician would just round it off to 0. A poker player would slap his cards down on the table and go home. And yet, here we are. Here we are. So thank you all.
Barry, just want to ask, is this being recorded?
Yes, it is.
Okay, doesn't look that way on my screen, but okay.
Yeah, well, it's going to come to my machine, so I'll have to send it to you to put together with the beginning.
Okay. Thank you, Philip. That was really terrific. This material is, I mean, we've gone to the sort of the ultimate here. It's so profound. Yeah, it's really beautiful, but difficult, but simple. Who else?
Ed?
Yes, I certainly would second that emotion. Real thanks to John and Michael for bringing us here. But what I also thought that this chapter, when I read it, was it synthesized so many things we've been discussing and thinking about and practicing as you've gone through this course, that I felt kind of like a aha moment. But what I really want to talk about is my personal reaction to what happened at the beginning. I don't know if everyone caught what the person said. She said, "Shut the F up." And I was so pained that that I'm pretty sure it was a she. That was her way of achieving pleasure, of trying to destroy whatever it was we were doing. And at that particular moment, I felt so blessed. We had just finished our practice, and we had come together, and I was aware of if you will, if of samsara and nirvana. I know we just said how they're the same thing, but I was really aware of it in a sense of distinction. And I don't know that there's any conclusion to that, but I just wanted to share those feelings with you.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to acknowledge our whole
Yeah,
experience.
definitely. It's funny, we had several Zoom bombers tonight.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, done season it.
Including one who seemed to come in as Valerie. I don't know how that happened.
I don't either, and they even had her picture up, that sunset. I
Yeah,
don't know how they pulled that off, but
we'll figure it out.
there was one thing I was going to say during the Zoom bombing that I think I can recollect in regard to the indestructible nature of Vajra nature, that and that it is indestructible because it's non-existent. That this is exactly what the line in the chant that says the essence of thought is Dharmakaya, as is taught, nothing whatever, but everything arises from it. To this meditator who arises in unceasing play, grant your blessing so that I realize the inseparability of samsara and nirvana. That's exactly, it's that verse, it's exactly it is what he's referring to here. That the fundamental nature of mind is completely open. And yet at the same time, what is it? Where is it? Nothing whatever. And yet everything we experience arises in awareness.
I think I want to emphasize that what he's talking about here, this clear awareness that we can all switch into right now, right here, letting go of thought or seeing the thoughts. That this is the fundamental nature of reality, and it's what's being discussed as the core of the Dharma. This is a practice that we can, if you want to call it a practice, we can come back to all the time, anywhere, at any time. We can come back to and recognize this clear awareness of space with the phenomenal world arising and passing away in it in the moment. And when we do that, we let go of thoughts. We let go of thoughts of good and bad, I and other, and we come back into this open, clear awareness. We can do it at any time. When we're walking down the street, when we're talking with a friend, when we're having dinner, whatever you're doing, in the shower. And so I'm just going to do a little bit more of this chapter, because he's talking now about, I'm going to skip this section on attaining of freedom from the kleshas, because that's what this is about, by the way. When you come back into this awareness, there is freedom from the passions, from jealousy and from anger and from lust and from pride. And because all of those things evaporate in this clear, open awareness of here and now, you and me, this room, this space. And then the section is talking about yeshe, primordial wisdom. Yeshe is Tibetan. Ye means primordial. She is a root word, the root of the word to know. So it's primordial knowing. See, it's this. It's primordial. It's beyond or before we thought about this and that. It's there from the beginning. Although there wasn't a beginning, it's there before the beginning. It's the foundation. It's primordial knowing. Always there. Has been before time. In Sanskrit, it's jnana, which is another word for knowing. So primordial knowing, sometimes this is called wisdom. The intrinsic aspect of the Vajrayana from beginning to end. It's not a matter of possessing wisdom, though we could say, no, we're not even going to go into that. Really, this yeshe is one with being. It's the union of wisdom and being. This maroon sweater, this pink cheeks, this sound of this voice, the yeshe, the wisdom, the knowing, is one with the being. The three, the body, speech, and mind, each one of them is one with this knowingness. Jnana in Sanskrit, yeshe in Tibetan. So experiencing reality is comprehending the nature of reality, he says. It's without a watcher. You don't need a watcher. A watcher is just an unnecessary add-on. The watcher is going saying, oh yeah, this is yeshe. Who cares? You don't need to see it. You can just acknowledge it, come back, and here it is. The watcher is like Trungpa Rinpoche called the watcher is this voice that says, that's that, this is this, now you're doing the other, whatever it might be. He called it the hitchhiker. You don't need it. It's an extraneous voice, just catching a ride. And you let it go, and there's just this, pristine, clear, awake, aware, naked, vivid, very, very vivid. The vividness of this cheek and this voice and this, whatever it is that you're encountering, the feeling of your bottom on the cushion and what you're looking at on your desk or wherever you happen to be sitting. So it's the nature of reality. It's without a watcher. It requires no one to observe it because it's one with knowingness, being and knowingness combined. That's one of the key descriptors for jnana, yeshe, being and knowingness in utter union. It's free from observation, although you can observe it, you can comment on it. You can say, oh yeah, there's yeshe. You can come back to it. You dream, you go off into thoughts, what's for lunch? I don't like this person, I do like that person. And then all of a sudden you come back, and here we are. You're coming back to now, to one's life, where one lives. I'm going to stop there. And we can have more discussion, and we'll pick up there again next week with protection from conditionality. I think this is a lot that we've dealt with tonight. Comments, questions?
Lane?
Complaints?
Yeah, I didn't think about this at the time, but when the Zoom bombers singled me out, I didn't feel any humiliation, any anger. I didn't take it personally in any way whatsoever. If I felt anything, I felt pity. I felt pity that the person felt a need to express themselves in that way. And I'm wondering now if what I experienced was something of Vajra nature. What do you think?
Absolutely. And the both meanings of that word means certainly, and it means absolutely true. Sure.
It seems like Lane, that you're experiencing egolessness, which would be, I guess, Vajra nature, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Vajra nature is egoless, contains it. Egolessness is sort of an earlier teaching. Vajra nature is more inclusive. Yeshe, jnana.
couple people have hands up.
Oh, sorry.
Dan
Danielle.
and Danielle. We have two, Dan and Danielle. Yes, nice.
Hi guys. It was probably just not, I was not with it this week or something, but when I was reading this chapter, there was just a lot of words and it just seemed like new words were describing the same thing as we learned in the Mahayana and the Hinayana. So I really couldn't discern what the difference was, that was making Vajra so different from, Mahayana. Like, it was just very, like, I don't know, I couldn't see anything different, and it was just very, like, I couldn't put my finger on any really a part of it because it was just like, it just seemed like it went everywhere, but said the same thing. And so that was my take on it. It could be just like had a bad week or something. I wasn't reading really well, but I was not really understanding it, I think. And it was a little bit frustrating. But that could be my state of mind too. So.
I recommend you go back and read it again. I mean, frankly, I've read this kind of thing so many times over the years, and every time it just is better. It sinks in more. It cures my errors bit by bit. And you see the difference between this and Mahayana is that in Mahayana, you feel as though you're going to get there someday. If you do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, then you'll get the result. This is saying, no, it's already here. It's already part of you. All you have to do is stop telling yourself you don't know and see it. It's right here. It's what we are, our fundamental nature. Doubts, questions, journeys take us away from it. And then we let go of them, and it's here. This is the whole difference, and this is really what the Vajrayana is about. It's saying you are already awake. You just have gotten lost in a dream of being not awake. And it's inviting us, asking us to wake up and come back to this world.
I think I should try it again. It just seems like the same concept, but with different words.
Try it again, and I'm happy, I'm available to talk to you on Zoom or anything else anytime.
Okay.
I mean, I'm working on this too. It's just, I've been working on it a long time, you might say. And by working on it, I mean trying to let me dissolve out of the picture. That I.
Yeah, I just say the difference is in the possibility of what we can experience. What's being described is that, but it's not it doesn't contradict the Mahayana at all. It's just that we can actually do it now. We don't have to wait.
Yeah.
I think like maybe the one thing that I maybe got was like, or didn't get was they were saying, he was saying it is indestructible because it's not even there. And so that I tried to struggle with understanding, you know what I'm saying?
I think
I guess it's the same thing, like everything comes from nothing and nothing comes from, so it's probably another variation on that. Maybe.
that's part of it, but I think it really comes down to just looking at the experience of when we're fully present. Just what that is, and realizing that it's that it's truly ungraspable. And we can give labels to it after the fact, but the actual experience is very complete and full, and at the same time, it's ungraspable.
and yet it's always here, right now. Let's see, we've got Sarah, Vicky, and then Mark.
I think Dan had his hand up first.
Okay, Dan too. No, I don't see Dan, but okay.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah,
Thanks, Sarah.
sorry.
Thanks. I love this chapter, and I want to thank you guys and all of you for making me love it even more. First of all, just in response to Danielle, and I don't know if this is accurate, but to me, it's indestructible because it was never constructed to begin with. So if it's something wasn't constructed, it can't be, it can't be destructed, right? And that's, I mean, and that goes along with this whole, everything in here, which is part of the problem, I think, in trying to communicate it. Because when we're communicating, we're just by definition, and there's no way out of it, we're in the relative world. We're dealing on the relative level, and we're communicating things that have these absolute, whether it's shunyata or just the absolute, our nature. Those things are not communicable in the relative world, and it's like what John was saying before about. And I've been thinking about this stuff anyway, and it really fit in, and also about to practice. But if there's a difference between, as an example, being cold and knowing that you're cold, and saying, I think it's cold. It's pretty cold out here. There's a difference. I was saying this to somebody the other day. Tsoknyi Rinpoche used to say all the time, maybe he still does, but there's a difference between your mother is not the same as the thought of your mother, right? And thinking is not the problem, but not being aware that we're thinking is being lost in thought. And when we're lost in thought and not aware that we're thinking, we're in a mind-created world that we're just living in it. And the great thing about practice is it makes it so obvious how much we're thinking. And coming back is just being aware that we're thinking. Because once we're aware that we're thinking, we're not lost. We're not like, it's like watching a movie and getting lost in the story, where you forget you're watching a movie, and what you're really just watching are just little pixels of light on the screen. None of the thrill is really happening. None of the chases is really happening. None of the romantic stuff, the love, or any of the stuff is really happening at all. But we get lost because there's not awareness, and that's great. That's great for when it is. But what it's not great is to walk around all day not even being aware that we're just lost inside our own mind-created realities. And which brings me to the purpose of meditation, what John just said before, just made me think of it again, is that we're doing this to be liberated. We're doing this with, as somebody else said, for freedom from the bondage of self, right? Freedom from the bondage of being lost in our own thoughts without being aware that we're living in a world that we're just creating with our thoughts. And that's a tremendous freedom, a tremendous liberation. And I think that's also the difference between pure mindfulness, shamatha meditation, and Vipassana meditation. So, directly, the goal of just simple mindfulness, the mindfulness that's so popular these days and everyone's doing, is not liberation. It's liberation, temporary liberation through relaxation and focusing. But what we're looking at is really being liberated from this, torturing ego and duality, Anyway, I've got a lot more to say, but I won't. Thank you.
Sarah.
Meg and Kurt did have their hand up before me also.
Okay. Meg. Kurt.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, this is just a experiential take on all of this. And when you talk, John, about this is available all the time. And I experienced it, one thing on the cushion to be at this point of present awareness. And then the thought, as I think of myself being in the world in present awareness, as I thought about that, I just realized that breaking through the self into present awareness, there's, what do I want to say? It's almost like well, it's a fear of dropping that whole ego. As I imagine myself out in public, I've developed this whole mask, and there's this persona, and I think of how I look before I present myself, and it's just such a huge contrast to the experience on the cushion in the privacy of my own meditation space. And then on the flip side of that, I realized that there's that rigpa and prajna that does exist being in the present moment. And so dropping the mask and the persona and all these ideas of how I am in the world, that's where the prajna can show up in socializing and being present with another person and being able to respond in the moment with that other individual or that other group. And so I just, it felt really, it struck deep, just the beauty, as you mentioned, that this is available all the time. And and my hope is that in time we'll be able to drop more and more that that mask, that shield, that armor, whatnot, and be. I guess it's a vulnerability, but in that vulnerability, that wisdom, that prajna, that rigpa takes place, and then it's completely safe because the whole ego drops away. So anyways, I'm just putting that out as what I hope to experience and what's been inspired by this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, Sarah.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I just wanted to say to Lane that when that happened and you got singled out, I personally felt a lot of pain. And I wonder, does that mirror back my own ego clinging, especially since you didn't feel any pain? Yeah, I don't know, because maybe I just thought if it was me, I would have felt hurt because I have an ego still.
That's so sweet of you to say that. I mean, it demonstrates the connection we have.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't feel pain from that. And then my question was, from my limited understanding of Vajrayana, it seems like there's a lot of visualizations that are taught. And in my experience, when I'm practicing a visualization, I find there's a lot of effort that I need to put into that. So how does that relate to the resting and awareness with no effort?
They are two, you might say, you see, what we're being enjoined to do when you do visualization practice this is getting advanced, is you are seeing this world. You are being enjoined to see formed into a more meaningful world, a world that we ignore in our daily lives. And the symbols for this more meaningfulness are what you visualize. You visualize Vajrayogini or Chakrasamvara, or you visualize, the Buddhist lineage tree or whatever it may be, that your lineage tree that you're visualizing when you do prostrations, or Vajrasattva sitting on your head. And these are symbols of the more meaningfulness of the world that we are blind to because we're so lost in our mundane concerns. However, all those practices, of visualization begin and end with what's called, what's the term, Michael? I'm blanking.
Formless meditation?
Creation, what's the word for the creation practice? Kairim and Sogrim,
Yeah.
Perfection stage practice. And what that means is that you start, before you do the visualization, by coming back to what he's describing here. This open, clear awareness. It's sort of pure, perfected vipassana. There's no me in it. Where if there is a me, the me comes and goes. And when it goes, then it's just this clear awareness. And that clarity, you create the visualization. And you do different things with the visualization. And at the end, you dissolve it back into this jnana that we're describing. And it's called creation and completion practice. The completion stage is this open awareness. It's what you begin with and what you end with. Oops, Barry, I've got a thing that says save the record. Must be the first one. Okay. Who knows what we've got recorded here? Maybe not supposed to be.
I'm continuing I'm continuing to record here, so
that's good.
Yeah, because the host switched, it got confused.
So the visualization process is really like it's the difference between shamatha and vipassana. Shamatha, you focus on an object. That's what you do in visualization practice. Vipassana, you widen your awareness to include everything. And what he's describing here is kind of vipassana perfected. Jnana, rigpa, all of these terms, yeshe. This is the perfection of vipassana, that we rest in this open space of awareness. So once we begin to understand that, you can just do the whole path, resting in rigpa, resting in yeshe, from beginning to end. And it is one of the last stages of the path with what's called the great perfection stage of the path, has two practices. And the first and most important one these days is what's being described in this chapter. On the other hand, alternatively, depending on your karma, you may do visualization practices where what you're doing is you're learning how to see the world as a sacred and meaningful place. Okay. Vicky and then Mark.
Yes. Thank you, John. I really was noticing the yeshe concept in this chapter, and I'm probably not going to explain this very well or communicate it very well, but I liked what you were saying about the confusion in the sending and taking in Tonglen, the confusion of who's what. That seems like little moments of groundlessness. I was wondering if that's kind of would be a yeshe moment when you get a little lost in the sending and the taking. And the other situation I wondered about is, we've talked about it before here, lucid dreaming, the moment when you sort of, when you're in your dream, and you could parallel this with just when we come back every day, during the day, coming back to the moment and out of dream. But in real dreams, when I've done lucid dreaming, that moment has a slipperiness to it, sort of maybe the way, this is my experience, the way the sending and the taking in Tonglen does. And I was wondering if that confusion or that slipperiness is, because it's a little uncomfortable, and that's ego saying, hey, I'm feeling threatened. Are those yeshe moments, do you think? Because they are just moments.
Michael, can you, I can't speak to lucid dreaming. It's not something that I've done.
Yeah, I'm not sure about lucid dreaming either, but I think the moments in like Tonglen practice, exchanging practice, where maybe we do become confused about who's who or what's what, is actually clearer than how we normally are when we think we have a very definite idea of who we are and what the world is, and we're so lost in our confusion that we don't even recognize it. So that in fact, I think there's yeshe in that experience. It's a waking up of some kind. Because ordinarily we don't even recognize the confusion that we are normally in.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in actual dreaming and then in real life, it's really very little difference in the way it feels. Just like if you're going around with an angry thought in your head about someone, and all of a sudden you catch yourself and you just stop.
And that's why dreaming, teachers will say, really, there's no difference between the dream state and our waking state, in the confused sense anyway, because in a dream we perceive what we think is a world out there and us here, and it's totally created by mind. And in the same way, in our waking life, we experience a world that we think is out there in ourselves here, and it's also created by mind, which isn't to say there isn't a world out there that doesn't exist. It's just that we only know it through our mind.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Mark.
Hi. Yeah, I was just, it's so interesting. We talk about meditation and, we always try to, you really can't describe it. And I know we bring up meditation, and I know it's because it really is the key to everything. To really kind of getting all this, that when things seem so complicated, if we come back to our meditation practice, and especially in time, that it really helps clarify the things we can't really look up in the dictionary. Meditation, I'm sure you could look it up, but it would never really explain what it is. And it really comes down to, it's an experience. And that's what I think they were talking about with its kind of indestructible nature of, and also primordial intelligence or primordial mind. These things that really sound, kind of hocus pocus, but there's really something there, you not describe. It's just, it's a wonderful thing, and it takes time, and it's, well, as I'm showing you, to me, it's really beyond. It's just an experience, and it's great. Also, I want to, Philip, you were great listening to you and talking about what I like to focus on, which is we're so lucky that we're here in the moment, that we're here, and that we have these wonderful teachers and each other, and to be sentient, and to be not, and all our atoms have been here floating around before we were born, and they'll be here when we're gone. And that gives me comfort too, And I know eventually everything disappears, but I'm not even sure that the scientists believe that. They say that eventually we all go into black holes and then everything's possibly reborn again. All I know is we're very lucky, and we should maybe think about that a little. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
We really got to the probably some of the most profound material in all of Tibetan Buddhism. I'm saying Tibetan because it includes the Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. And this concept of Yeshe, Jnana, it's a description of complete, utter reality. It's as deep as it goes. There are other aspects to it that haven't been discussed, but basically, we're being enjoined to become enlightened. That's what these teachings are about. And enlightenment means recognizing our fundamental nature, which is Yeshe, and learning how to return to it, to come back from the vagaries and distresses of thought and emotion, of this and that, into this awareness which is here all the time. Now, it doesn't move, it doesn't change, it's constantly here. It encompasses change, it encompasses things moving and changing, but the awareness itself, we come back to it again and again. And when we do, we begin to dissolve that sense of I with all of its vagaries and idiosyncrasies. Now, that doesn't mean that we become uniform. Each one of us has a distinct nature. These are described, and we're going to get to this at some point in this book, in the Buddha natures. There are 5 basic Buddha natures, and these are our enlightened manifestations, and each one of us is different. We're like snowflakes, but we cover it over, we distort it with our fears, our anxieties, our uncertainties, our resist, and all kinds of things like that, the stuff of ego mind. And that covers over our true, vivid, beautiful natures. So each one of us is going to become, as we tread this path, more and more vivid, more and more powerfully who we are. And at the same time, in our own minds, we become less and less. There's less and less of me, of I. Me and my worries, me and my hopes, me and my prides, me and my, all of that. That evaporates, and we each emerge much more vividly. The different qualities that we have. So we'll pick up next week with the section Yeshe, Primordial Wisdom, and we'll do our best to finish this chapter so that we can go on. There's still a lot more to go in this chapter. And it's time, so who's going to lead us in the closing chants? Who was it?
Hey, Sarah?
Sarah, would you? Okay, I'll put the chants.
Before we close, just wanted to let people know I'll be doing a meditation retreat, so I won't be with you the next 2 Tuesdays, but it has nothing to do with Zoom bombers or anything else. So.
And I'm going to work with Barry, and we'll be much more cautious about who we let in next week and get stricter, and so that we don't have that again.
And I'll be back.
You know what? Be careful, because I've noticed that they're in the chat as well. Some of the Zoom bombing. Some of the Zoom bombers made comments in the chat.
Right. We'll get rid of them.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. Maybe. Computer problems too. Here we go. Sorry, my computer is really, I've got a spinning rainbow wheel a lot of the time. You might just have,
I can put them up, I think.
good.
Oh, there they are.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sarah.
Okay. We will close with a prayer for peace and then by dedicating the merit earned by our practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. By the blessings of
Blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones,
by the power
for
of
the power of my positive
actions
actions of 3 times.
and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to
All
live
learn to live lovingly with each other.
by this merit. May all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you all. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, John. Thanks, Mike.
Take care.
That last chant we do, it's full of jnana. Confidence of the golden sun of the great east.
Robin.
That's about it. That's what it's got. Here's Valerie.
Valerie, I did.
Bobby.
The Zoom bomber.